It's hard not to feel a little bad for Pluribus, in that I almost feel like it's come at the wrong place at the wrong time. What I mean is, with his past works, especially Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, Vince Gilligan has set a kind of standard of quality, yes, but also of style, and with the immense acclaim and popularity of said works, he's amassed a fan base that follows him for that style. Only problem, this is the same episode that made Fly the lowest rated episode of Breaking Bad. Fly, the character-focused, slow-paced, melancholic masterpiece that acts as a great halfway touch point for Walter's character, arguably being the last time outside the finale that he actually shows any genuine introspection and self-reflection. In retrospect, that kind of fan base was never gonna be 100% on board with a show like Pluribus. Pluribus is a show that, to use an old expression of mine, really soaks in itself. It's not afraid to let scenes and even shots drag on with seemingly no purpose or intent. Except that isn't true. In this medium, there's always purpose and intent behind every decision made, and it's always important to ask yourself what the intent is in these situations. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. I want to talk about the actual show here. That's ultimately what interests me. Skip ahead to the next chapter if you don't need a recap. Pluribus follows Carol, a closeted fiction writer who is known for her heterosexual pirate romance smart, which is very successful but leaves her feeling creatively unfulfilled, as she suddenly finds herself one of only 13 people left unaffected by an extraterrestrial virus that unifies the rest of humanity into a single shared consciousness, the initial chaos causing the death of millions, including Carol's wife, leaving her to navigate this new world all alone as the hive minds do their best to endear themselves to her and make her life comfortable, with the eventual goal of figuring out a way to cure her of her immunity so she and the rest can join them. After the first episode, which is presented with all the chaos and horror of an alien invasion turned zombie flick, the show really slows down as Carol adjusts to the new nature of the world, or you could say, does absolutely everything in her power to avoid adjusting. From the beginning, Carol is openly hostile to the hive mind, not only not wanting to join them, but straight up not wanting to engage with them, period. There's an incuriosity about Carol that makes it difficult for her to actually do a lot of stuff, something the other individuals actually call her out on. Her unwillingness to really accept or engage with the hive mind as it exists is something that really holds her back, and I think this is all tied to her paradoxical sense of individuality, namely it being something that she holds a lot of personal value in, while at the same time struggling to deal with it in other people. And yeah, for most of the world, individuality is no longer a concept anymore. However, this extends even to the other remaining individuals. She completely burns any chance she has of working with most of them by refusing to meet them where they are, refusing to acknowledge and take seriously their perspectives and opinions, instead just assuming what they think because they'd be stupid not to want to save the world. And those are the people she actually meets. She doesn't even bother with the people who can't speak English. I wonder if the show is making any kind of commentary or allegory with that. I don't know. This is where we get into the whole collectivism versus individuality aspect of the show. Carol is firmly on the side of the latter, which, as the only person alive who identifies as rich, white, and American anymore, makes way too much sense. There's an entitlement that her autonomy and her opinions be taken seriously, which, to be clear, they should, but she is extremely reluctant to extend this courtesy to the hive mind, or even her fellow survivors, which eventually leads to her drugging her handler Zosha with pentothal, which used to be used in lethal injections and is banned in the EU, leading to her nearly dying of cardiac arrest. The hive mind then all but abandons her out of fear for its safety, effectively giving her the space and autonomy she wanted, while still providing the support and convenience of a wider, yet invisible society. In other words, she gets to pretend like she's a rough and rugged individual living life on her own terms, when in reality it feels more like she's a spoiled child throwing a tantrum. While this is all happening, you also have Manusos, who is a bit of a mirror image to Carol, someone who also heavily values retaining his own independence amidst the joining, although this arises from and results in different behaviours. Manusos as a person seems obsessed with being 100% self-sufficient and self-dependent, spending the first half of the show isolating himself from the hive mind, refusing all of their attempts to connect or even support him. He also refuses to engage with the hive mind as if they are even still human, seeing them exclusively as an alien force that has stolen the bodies of his fellow humans, which, especially since Manusos himself is a Colombian, adds a neo-colonialist tinge to the joining that is unacknowledged until then. While all this does make him more proactive than Carol in some aspects, it also makes him more sedentary and pig-headed in others. Like, to the people who wanted him to be the main character because he stomped through a rainforest, you realise that if that were the case, most of the show would just be him sitting in an office by himself eating dog food in silence before walking out and nearly dying in the rainforest. The irony is that when these two people, individuals united by a common goal to save humanity despite differences in culture, language and geography, finally meet, they can't fucking stand each other. They're both so stubborn and unwilling to even consider thinking about the other person's view that they nearly completely blow their chance to work together successfully, which is of course contrasted negatively with the utilitarian, almost effortless efficiency of the hive mind. I think the show, through all of this, is making the point that you can be as stubborn and individual as you want, but you can never escape from the reality that people need people. Like I said, Manusos nearly dies trying to walk the Darien Gap by himself, needing to be rescued by the hive mind, and Carol finds herself quickly succumbing to the isolation, displaying depressive and even suicidal behaviours to the point that she eventually cracks and begs the hive mind to come back because she just needs someone. So that's it then, collectivism wins, it's obviously the best system, individualism sounds great and all, but a person cannot survive without other people. Congratulations Carol, you won the game. And this is why, friends, you watch the entire season before deciding you know what it's about. Episode 9, the final episode, opens with Kasamayu, one of the immune, deciding to join the hive mind by allowing them to harvest her stem cells to create a custom version of the virus. We see her in her Peruvian village going about her daily routine, speaking with her family, reassuring her about the transition she's about to make, telling her they've made her favourite food, taking care of the animals, just going about her way of life in general. The virus arrives, and as she begins transitioning into one of them, her family holds her and the rest of the village begins chanting and singing in Quechua, probably butchered that, one of Peru's indigenous languages. And then, it's done. They all get up and walk away without a single word. An entire culture and way of life gone. Throughout the series, we've occasionally gotten glimpses of how the hive mind acts without any of the individuals present, how they immediately shift into this silent, hyper-utilitarian workflow where communication is essentially unnecessary now. And these scenes have always stuck with me, always kept me from fully buying into whatever it is the hive mind says. But this scene here, this scene is what made me fully against whatever they are, because this isn't collectivism. It's assimilation. The hive mind isn't a bunch of people working together for collective benefit. It is a single organism spread across multiple physical bodies, seeking to propagate itself because that's what viruses do. It's not interested in culture, in language, in communication. Why would it? Those things only arise from separate individuals connecting with each other. The hive mind frames itself as everyone on Earth being connected, but if everyone is the same, then it is no everyone, just one. And one person cannot have a conversation with themselves. One person cannot have a culture with themselves. One person cannot have relationships with themselves. If everyone is just you, How is that any different from being alone? Fuck, I already made the video comparing this to Evangelion and I just threw that shit on the second channel. Oh, this is why you wait for shit, man. This episode alone put me firmly on Carol's side, especially when it's revealed that, despite her explicitly telling them she doesn't consent to being turned, the Hive use her frozen eggs to go behind her back and begin developing a custom virus anyway, an explicit betrayal not just of her trust, but also her bodily autonomy. And while we're on the subject, yes, while Carol is a rich white woman, which obviously affords her a position of privilege and material wealth, we cannot forget that she is also a queer woman. One who had to survive being sent to conversion camp as a kid, and even after growing up and finding a wife, still had to censor herself by changing the female love interest of her book to a male one in order to reach mass appeal. So she knows what it's like to be forced to assimilate into a wider hegemony against her will. Also, they kinda killed her wife, so I mean, not a good first impression. Anyway, to bring this back to the start of the video, all of this that I've been talking about, all this analysis and shit, that stuff I could have only arrived at because I trusted the show, met it where it was at, and allowed it to unravel at its own pace. I'd say it's the kind of show built for binging, but even saying that feels like ignoring a wider problem I'm seeing where we aren't really willing to let shit breathe and just go at its own pace. Like, yeah, you could say that Carol spends most of episode 7 doing nothing, but that only becomes nothing is happening when the show doesn't acknowledge and work with that fact, when that isn't a deliberate choice of storytelling, and you don't have to like that, but you can't call that nothing. Personally, I love it when a show or film or game or whatever is confident enough to let its characters do nothing and just exist in a state and see what happens. That isn't to say that it always pans out or that there are no situations where fast pacing and active characters aren't welcome or appropriate. Even in Pluribus, there were moments where I was like, okay, Vince, you're kinda dragging it a little bit. But honestly, I'm glad we do still have big, ambitious shows that aren't in a race to cram as much down our throats in a sprint to get to the good stuff, which is a philosophy that honestly killed a lot of shows, including some that I used to like quite a bit. Now that all of Pluribus is out and people won't have to suffer waiting weekly for new episodes, here's hoping that people do end up checking it out and appreciating what's there. At least until season 2 starts airing and this whole thing kicks off again, but we'll deal with that when we have to deal with that. A big thank you to all my Patreon supporters, including Michael Coolwood, El Bigante, and Fox. If you want to help me do what I do, then you can pledge to my Patreon, where you get a look behind the scenes, early access to videos and music, such as the song playing right now, as well as credits and videos. Otherwise, like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.